If you can hear it or imagine it, you can probably recreate it by using the third wave. Hello everybody, we're here today to introduce you to the newest member of the third wave family, the 8M. The 8M is a compact desktop synthesizer with 8 voices and 2 parts that gives you all of the synthesis techniques and all of the sound that you've come to expect from the third wave family. This is the most accessible way into the third wave sound, and it makes no compromises in sound quality whatsoever. Now, let's tell you about what the third wave is. The third wave is a synthesizer with 5 different synthesis techniques that will allow you to recreate just about any sound that you can think up. So starting with what you see on the screen here, we've got a PPG factory patch. That's because we've recreated the PPG signal processing chain right down to the imaging, the high rate that they ran at, all of the wild and weird sounds that you would get with a PPG. One of the reasons I've always loved the PPG and why it's so inspiring, you had bands like Depeche Mode and Thomas Dolby and producers like Trevor Horn that were using this thing. In this case, a factory patch was used directly in a sound by a band from Australia, the Eurogliders, and you get this. Number 2 is modern day wavetables. So you can also do modern day wavetables where we will take in audio and recreate a wavetable from that audio for you. You can also import serum wavetables. You can also make a wavetable from scratch if that's what you'd like to do. Number 3, we've got 3 oscillator analog. So there are 3 oscillators in the third wave, and anything that you can dream up that you would do with a subtractive analog synthesizer, you can do here. So you've got 3 oscillators, virtual oscillators. As far as the analog waveforms, they're spline interpolated, great mathematical model. They go right into a real analog filter. So we've got the SSI 2140 filters in here. There are 8 of them, and it's an analog backend. They're out. You've also got a second filter, which is the SEM state variable filter. So what you would have on a Oberheim. So you've got those running in series. You've got state variable filter into the low pass filter on out. Number 4 is FM. So we've got 3 oscillators. You can do FM from oscillator 1 to 2, 2 to 3, or 3 to 1, and you've got 2 parts. So you can actually get up to 6 operator if you are really thinking about it here. You don't have to do sine wave FM as you would do with a Yamaha DX7, for instance. You can also do any waveform to any waveform. So you can go from beautiful FM bells to really ugly stuff if you want to do it. Last but not least, number 5 is we've got sampling. So any of these 3 oscillators can be a sample, it can be analog, it can be PPG wavetable, it can be modern day wavetable, or it can be some form of FM. Between those 5 synthesis techniques, I humbly submit that you are going to be able to recreate anything that you can think of. If you can dream up a sound with those 5 items, and the fact that you've got 2 parts as well, and the fact that you've got 3 oscillators, and any of the oscillators can be anything that you want, you are going to be able to recreate whatever sound you can dream up. All right, now we've mentioned to you all of the synthesis techniques. Now I want to go into the fact that we've also got 500 patch locations loaded with 450 great and very inspiring patches that cover either all 5 synthesis techniques or combinations of them or anything in between that will get you inspired without ever having to change anything with the sound. Here's bank 1, bank 2, bank 3, bank 4, bank 5. Up here in bank 5 is where we've got most of the sampling options, but you can play this thing to your heart's content and get really creative and inspired really quick without ever even having to touch the 5 synthesis techniques that I talked about. And you can explore a wide universe of sounds right away. So now that I've mentioned these various synthesis techniques, let's go back to the starting point. Number 1 is that the third wave recreates the PPG signal processing chain. And what is that and what does it sound like? Well, here we go with a factory patch from the original PPG. I'm going to play you a couple of others here. What you should be hearing in all these cases is a glassy, kind of otherworldly sound, and that is due to the lack of imaging filters, the high rate, all kinds of weird things that you would not find in a modern day piece of gear, but that was in the original PPG signal processing chain. Why does that matter? Because you get stuff like this with low notes. Don't listen to the bass, listen to what you've got on top. You've got all this beautiful garbage that is actually harmonically related to the note that you're playing. So this is not aliasing, it's actually images of the original spectrum that get drugged down into the area that you can hear because they didn't use an anti-imaging filter and because you're taking a note that would have been much shorter up at the top spectrum and you're stretching it out. We've got some other videos that will show you more about this, but that is the original PPG sound, and you get beautiful items like this. This is one I always ask people, are you hearing effects or not? Well, this is also done with a PPG sound. And that was a rhetorical question. You are not hearing effects, but you are hearing beautiful wavetable movement. All right, that is the PPG. That's number 1 of those 5 techniques I talked about. That's the PPG synthesis technique. Synthesis technique number 2 are the modern day wavetables. And I'm going to start you out, ironically enough, with an old sound, but you're going to think you're hearing a sample. That's not a sample. We brought in audio from a Fairlight and made a wavetable out of it automatically. What do I mean by we made a wavetable out of it automatically? If I go up to this patch, which is me saying the word groove synthesis into it, it's actually taking that audio and making a wavetable out of it. So that is what you are seeing right here on the screen. Groove synthesis. These are individual single cycle waveforms, and it's taken what was a large sample and compressed it down to this spot. You can walk through these forward, backwards, stop, whatever you want to do, and you get this type of a sound right here. So this is modern day wavetables with no filtering, nothing else going on. We're just walking through a wavetable and you wind up with beautiful patches like this. So this gives you an idea of what the modern day wavetable stuff is. All right, synthesis technique number 3. Remember, we've got 3 oscillators, so you've got 3 oscillator analog. And if I play you this, you're hearing not only analog, but you're hearing an analog filter, as I'd already said, the 2140. And we've got 8 of these guys in here. So there you're hearing analog running through an analog low-pass filter. Here you are hearing analog running through an SEM style filter. So this is what you'd get with a state variable filter as well. And if I bring it all the way out here to some of the new patches we've got 2 parts here that should sound very familiar to you for a CS80 type of sound. And we love Vangelis just like everybody else does. So here you go. So that is actually one part doing this sound, and this is the other part doing that sound, and what you get is a sum. And if I play you that sequence again, there you go. So you've got just about anything that you can think of that you can do with an analog synthesizer and 3 oscillators covered with this. So now we're going to go to sampling. There you've got drum samples and actually analog creating part of that snare, but you get things like that, and then when you start to combine those samples with a wavetable, for instance, you start to get things like this. So that is the first part of a sample into a wavetable. So this is another example right here where we've got a fretless bass, and on part 2, we've got a cowbell, and you get things like this. Now we're going to have a sample library that comes with the 8M and the bigger brothers, and that is going to have all kinds of stuff in it, including things like this. But this is a combination of a sample, a wavetable, and an analog waveform. And you probably won't even hear it as being a sample. But coming back to the sampling, you can still do just normal things like this. This is an example where we've got a 3 oscillator analog pad, which I've already just shown you we're capable of, along with samples doing the drums. And if I come into the part section, you'll see me right here getting rid of the samples. There's your 3 oscillator analog sound along with a delay line, and right back we go with the samples. So those are a couple of small examples, mostly drums here, but you think of anything that you want to sample and you can put it in here and combine it with those other synthesis techniques as well. All right, so this last example that I'm going to show you here actually has FM and sampling in it. So this one is a sample of some drums that we took down to 12 bits and took down to 29 kilohertz Anybody out there that has ever used an EMU SP1200 should recognize that, and you should hear that character in these drums right here. But then listen to what's up at the top when I start to play. All right, what you should be hearing there is some very ugly non-sine wave to sine wave FM. Again, we can give you FM that's beautiful and bells, but the main point here is that we can give you FM of any type that you can imagine because of the fact that you've got the two parts and the ring of oscillators that you can do FM with. And that right there is an example of non-sine wave FM. So now we've covered all 5 of the techniques just a little bit. With this, you're getting 2 parts and 8 voices. The 2 parts have got 2 stereo pairs out the back. We've got all of the controls on here that you would normally need for performance or sound design that you're going to grab the most. So we've got the 3 oscillators with all the controls that go with that. We've got the filter section with both the filters, cut off, everything here. We've got envelopes. We're giving you 4 ADSR envelopes, filter, amp, and a floating envelope 3 and 4. These are all immediately controllable by just grabbing the knobs you've got here in front of you. We're also giving you a 7-inch display with 6 encoders that allow you to do those less used controls. We've got 4 LFOs, for instance. We've got a wave envelope, for instance. We've got 3 wave envelopes, 1 per oscillator. That's a linear envelope that is actually a different beast and also can be assigned to any destination. It doesn't have to go just to the wavetables, which is its default. Which brings me over to the mod section. You've got 128 modulation destinations, very extensive modulation. And finally, you've got effects. You've got 2 effects per part. So with 2 parts, you've got a total of 4 effects. You can almost tie yourself in a knot with just the effects alone. And the effects have got models of things like right here, a bucket brigade delay that's modeled off of a memory man. We've got a Mutron biphaser that's 6-stage phaser in here. We've got models of a 224XL plate. We've got models of a 480L hull and room and all kinds of other items. We also have in here a pattern-based sequencer. So you've got a pattern-based sequencer like you would have in a drum machine that will allow you to string patterns together, use quantize, use swing, put them together into a song. Anything that you would have in a normal drum machine format, you've got in here with these 2 parts. You've got arpeggiators, an arpeggiator with all of the various forms and patterns that you would have, including the fabulous Roland Random. And that is the 3rd wave 8M, and it will be available to you to recreate any possible sound that you want. All right, so where does the 8M fit into the 3rd wave family? Well, as I already mentioned, this is 8 voices and 2 parts. What we've got here is the original keyboard. This is 24 voices and 4 parts. 24 voices and 4 parts in the desktop. So if you take a look at this patch, this has got 4 parts going all at once. And this was Drew Newman, one of our great sound designers. He did the soundtrack for Aeon Flux, and he needed 4 parts. To create that sound right there. So if you've got to have a layer with 4 parts, the first 2 layers will work over here, but not all 4. Now I'm going to go to an example where we're doing multi-part sequencing. So remember, you can also use 4 parts to do multi-part, multi-timbral sequencing. There you're hearing 4 items go at once. If I go into this section, you've got your mixer for all of these parts. So here we're actually making most of a song with the 4 parts, and that is something that you will not be able to do over here on the 8M, or at least you will only be able to do the first 2 parts. One other example of that would be if I come out here, we've got an example of a patch that also uses 3 different parts, and if you hit this patch, it's a really cool patch that is using 2 parts for this sound, but now if I dig in, I'm turning on a 3rd patch that's using the arpeggiator. That came to us courtesy of Sam Gutman, Lauryn Hill's keyboard player. But at any rate, my point here is that these 3 parts, the first 2 that you're hearing there will play fine on the 8M, but you will not get that last piece that I'm digging into. So things where you actually do need 4 parts, where you do need 24 voices, that's not going to translate directly. However, the 8M, of course, you can always multi-track it. And what I do want to show you here is that things like this, where you're using 2 parts, are a direct translation. So if I come here, there we're using samples on 1 part, and we're using noise and analog on a 2nd part with a unison patch. If I come over here, that's the same patch. Identical sound, everything. So again, patch compatible between the family as long as you're 2 voices or less. And as we just said, there's always multi-tracking if you have to have more than 2 parts. With that, that is the 3rd Wave 8M.